Hi there, and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry, and the most difficult part of running this podcast is trying to come up with a new silly fact for the intro each time. This chat is with a super talented friend of mine, Dorsa Bidhendi. Dorsa and I actually met back in 2018 at Sheridan College's animation program, and she just graduated from said animation program this past spring, so I thought I'd bring her on to share how she got her first storyboard revisionist job fresh out of school. She also shares the advantage of completing a fine arts degree at OCAD University beforehand, and what made her storyboard portfolio stand out to recruiters. But first, I have a message from my super great friends over in Montreal, and that is that the stop motion event of the year is back in person this September. Festival Stop Motion Montreal returns to the big screen at Concordia University's J.A. de Serre Theatre from September 16th to 18th. 75 of the top short films in stop motion cinema were selected to compete this year across 10 different screening programs for the coveted Ball and Socket Trophy Awards, and there's going to be special guest conferences, exhibitions, meet the filmmakers, networking opportunities, and so much more. VIP passes are on sale now. Visit stopmotionmontreal.com for more information and to pick up your pass. And now, without further ado, let's jump in. Hi, Dorsa. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great too. It's very nice to see your face after not seeing you on the GO train.
Yeah. Oh, I really
going
enjoyed
going
that.
to and from Sheridan College years ago.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you again, and just it's also really exciting just seeing everything that you're working on these
Oh, thank
days.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just super exciting in general when I talk to anybody from school because there's been a whole world that's happened since. Like, you
Mhm.
know, we've all kind of grown up and graduated and we're out of the school stress and into real life working stress. And so
Yeah.
let's chat about that.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. What I'm just curious, why did you want to come on well, I asked you, but why did you want to come on the podcast? What do you expect? I don't know, because you also known me for a while and that I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts
Yeah.
and opinions
I
on
just
this?
missed you, Terry. I just wanted to talk to you again, and you're just so cool. You don't have the time.
Oh,
No, I'm
wow.
kidding.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. You're super uncool. Didn't miss you at all. Never thought about you
Oh, you're putting
once.
words in my
That's
mouth
fine.
already.
That's
I love
fine.
this. No, in all honesty, like I've just been really interested in everything that you've been doing, and like I know some people already who have come on the podcast, and they've all had nothing but great things to say about it. So when you asked me, I was like, oh my God, me? Little old me? That's so
Well,
nice of
I really
you.
like your art. I think you're cool.
Well, you're very kind, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you again so much for having me.
Oh, of course. Well, yeah, we're here to talk about animation, but I know you didn't start in animation. You actually started in fine arts, oil
Hmm.
painting, and all that fun
Yeah,
stuff
I
at
did.
OCAD. What happened there? Was that your first degree? I have a feeling that you were doing something else before OCAD. No?
No, that was my first degree. I went to OCAD fresh out of high school. And
Wow.
yeah, I was in the drawing and painting program for the first year, and then from the second year onward, I switched into integrated media with a focus on digital painting and expanded animation. It was still kind of like a baby program back then, wasn't super fleshed out yet,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, it was a weird thing because like I knew that I wanted to do art, and then I knew that OCAD was also a really well-renowned university. And then I also knew about Sheridan, and I was thinking of going go to Sheridan straight after high school, but then I don't know, I didn't think that I really had the skills that were good enough yet, and B, it was kind of a safer option back then to go to a university as opposed to a college, and that was like the mindset that I had back then.
For art specific. So you're in high school and you're like, I really like drawing and painting. And I don't know what a career looks like, but I know that there's this really cool university, OCAD in
Mhm.
Toronto, that teaches art. So I'm going to go there.
Yeah, just like the idea of like kind of going to school and not having to do all of like the extra courses and like, science and math and the stuff
Yeah.
that you have to do in high school, and then
But you
just
didn't have to
going and
do any
just
electives.
yeah, well, we did have electives, because it was like a university degree. I don't know if that's like still how it works, where like if you want like a university degree, you have to do like a certain level of like
Yeah.
liberal arts courses or something. Um, But I mean, I didn't mind those either. Just the thought of like being able to go to school and like draw or paint and like create was just like, oh wow, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's really cool to me. So you didn't have a specific plan on where you wanted to end up. You know, you're in storyboarding now, but you didn't imagine you were going to be going to school to learn storyboarding to get into that. You were more like, I like art, and I'm assuming your parents supported you to be like, this is a great decision, and they weren't like, what are you doing with your life to go to art
Well,
school?
they were worried. They were worried,
Yeah.
and it was part of the decision for me to go to OCAD as opposed to Sheridan right off the bat, where they were like,
Ah.
"Oh, you want to do art? Okay, at least go to a university first." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." But I mean, like, I always adored animation. I knew that I eventually wanted to work in animation,
Hmm.
but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like, I at first I was like, oh, I want to like actually animate, and then I started like drawing more, and I was like, maybe I want to do like more like design stuff, and that's kind of like how I got into like really honing my painting skills, my drawing skills, and then I actually didn't even know that storyboarding was a job back then until kind of like the year before I got into Sheridan, where I was like, oh, what salaries make good money in animation? And then it was like, oh, storyboard artist. And I'm like, what do those guys do? What's that? And that's when I kind of like first clued in. I
Ah.
didn't yet want to be in storyboarding at that point. I still wanted to do biz dev, but yeah, it was a slow, gradual kind of like learning process for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask because I think a lot of people start out not really, myself included. I thought I wanted to get into storyboarding when I went to Sheridan. That's specifically what I had in mind, and didn't end up that way at all. But a lot of people, I think they start out being like, I just like art and drawing and painting and doing digital stuff. And you went and got a 4-year degree in it. At what point did you kind of said once you look at salaries, was that kind of a turning point for you to be like, now I can hone this like art that I like to do into one specific path? Or did you like after these 4 years of your viz or at OCAD
Hmm.
and then going into Sheridan, was there a different point where you were like, now I'm gonna focus myself?
So it was actually more of like an early on process. I kind of went through my first year at OCAD, and it it wasn't like the best experience for me because after that first year is when I realized that maybe like fine arts isn't really my thing, because
Hmm.
while I love the creativity aspect of like just being able to make whatever you want to make, um I did also realize that like I wanted to work on projects that kind of made me want to go down this path in the first place. Like the shows that I watched as a kid, the games I played as a kid, the movies I watched. I realized that I kind of wanted to be a part of a bigger team, and fine arts can tend to be very like lonely or like individualistic in a way. Like it's just kind of like you making your thing, but I wanted to work as part of a team. I wanted to like collaborate with people. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to learn from other people. So I think after my first year, and that's why I switched into integrated media instead, because we were learning more software through integrated media than in drawing and painting. That's when I kind of like started to kind of like hone my software skills, my computer skills. I didn't know anything about computers at that point. And that's how I got good at After Effects actually and compositing. And then from there, in my fourth year is when I decided to apply to Sheridan with the portfolio. And I was like, okay, yeah, like now I know that I want to work in the animation industry. I don't want to be like a fine artist. I don't want to just be like a painter doing my own thing.
Yeah. Do you think you had to go through that experience to learn that?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Because y- you know, it's not like a unique story that like, the lonely art nerd, like I was always like major introvert, like didn't really step out of like my little bubble too much, had like three friends. And so I thought that like, I'd be okay just like being alone all the time and like doing my own thing. And then like I stepped out of like the high school sphere into like the real world, going to downtown Toronto, going to school downtown Toronto, and like meeting all these people and like talking to people. And I was like, okay, no, maybe I do like people more than I think I do.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like to kind of pursue the thing you wanted to do and then realize you didn't, it wasn't really you, and you found this
Mhm.
other new thing. I'm just wondering, did your 4-year degree help you get into Sheridan in fine arts, the 4-year degree in fine arts? Like, did you find the portfolio like super simple, or was it still like stressful and like
It was
No?
super stressful still.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's like I never let my guard down when it comes to like art stuff because I'm
Yeah.
like I feel like once you do that is when your skills start to diminish for myself
Totally.
anyway. Yeah, just because it's like there's always something to learn when it comes to art. You're never going to be like, oh, I'm a master artist now. I know how to do everything.
Yeah, and I feel like if you like if it doesn't matter to you, then why are you doing it? Like, why are you pursuing art? Because it's such a
Yeah.
it's not like a career where you just like, yeah, take a course and then you're hired and then you're there for life. It's like you
Yeah,
constantly are struggling to just get noticed and to like do the thing that
that's
people
a big
want.
thing.
And like
That's a
even when
really
you're
big
in the
thing.
industry, you're just contracted. Like I'm just contract to contract right now. I'm working on some really cool video games, but it's not like once it's done, you have to search for the next thing, and it's just like forever.
Yeah, yeah. Like it has to be very passion driven. Like my younger brother actually is like he's going to high school next year and he's going to an art high school because he wants to follow his big
Ooh,
sister's footsteps. Yeah. But like I told him to, and like I would tell anyone who's looking to get into animation or just like art as their career path is that you have to make sure that you really, really love it because whether you
yeah.
choose to go to school or not, you're going to hit a point where you're going to love it just a little bit less just because of everything that you've gone through. And that's like the sad reality where like you go through all these like stressful experiences of like, oh man, I've been working on my portfolio for like 3 nights straight. I've gotten 2 hours of sleep, or like, oh, this assignment that I've been working on at school has just been like drilling my head and I just can't wrap my head around it. And it's a stressful experience and it's really nerve-wracking to kind of like put yourself out there and then like face rejection as well because that's something that every artist faces. It's like you put yourself out there and you get rejected and over again until one studio is like, yeah, I'll take you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it could be disheartening sometimes, but if the passion is kind of there as like the foundation of what you're building yourself and your career off of, then you're going to be fine.
So okay, so going through you've just gone through like 8 years of school, which is pretty intense and a very long time. what
Oh
what
man.
is the what is the driving passion for you that would put you through that experience? Even when you say that, certain things happen where you just like it a little bit less and stresses and all that stuff. Like, what is that underlying passion that you've discovered that you're like, you know what, I'm gonna push through this and make this into my career?
Yeah, it's funny because like I've talked to people about this before too, where like explaining passion is so difficult because
Yeah.
unless you've experienced it, you won't fully understand it. And like the best way that I can explain it is that as a kid, like I was insanely socially anxious as a kid, like went mute for days on end sometimes. But the way that I would kind of interact with the world around me was through
Hmm.
stories, through video games, through stories, through shows, through films, movies. And it's the way that I learned how to connect with other people was through those stories and through those characters as well. I would see the characters kind of like going through their own struggles and their own hero's journeys, if you will. And it was from there that I was like, okay, I think I get it. And I can relate to this specific experience that this character had, or like this specific experience from this story, or like, oh, there's a parallel there with my life. And so that was kind of stories did that for me. Like they helped me in a way that like it almost like helped me help myself almost.
Yeah.
And I think wanting to like be a part of that, wanting to be a part of those kinds of projects and those kinds of works that would then kind of like help out the other really socially anxious kids that don't really know how to step out of their bubble. Um, that's kind of like what drives me. And also, it's just great to be able to just draw whatever I want, whenever I want.
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
I'm I think that's very pure and genuine. That's very like I love that you return to like a place of like when you were younger, and I think that's I think a lot of well, I also have something that's similar to that. So you're having a really rough day, you've stayed up for 3 nights straight, your manager makes you redo boards, and like is this a place you come back to frequently?
Uh Well, thankfully, I haven't had that issue with
Oh,
my
good.
jobs yet. Yeah, like both studios I've worked at so far have been wonderful. Um, but I had a lot of that during school where
Yeah.
there's like that like little bit of competition where you really feel the need to kind of like give your 150% all the time and kind of like, yeah, it was tough sometimes during school. And like, I won't lie, there were times where I was like, am I even cut out for this? But, everyone has that like imposter syndrome
Oh yeah,
moment
I
or
would
moments.
just cry. I actually cried a few times after life drawing because I'm just like, I
Oh
can't.
no,
This
it's
is too
always life
tough.
drawing, isn't it? It's always life drawing.
It's so rigorous. You're like sitting for 3 hours drawing constantly, and then you look at other. I won't mention names, but some people just are masters at it, and you're like,
Some people just get it.
how? How?
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're talking about because like I love gesture drawing, I love figure drawing, but like during life drawing, I'd be like, what am I doing? What is this
Yeah,
even?
and it's like you mentioned the competitiveness, which as you were talking, I was thinking about that too. I felt so internally competitive with like everybody for no reason.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
know why. It's just because I guess this you feel like the stakes are so high and everybody's so talented. You just want to like impress others and keep up and make sure that you're being unique and like
Yeah.
all these things. And it's I don't even know where it comes
It,
from
it
because
is it
like
is also like a little bit of like the school culture, like when
yeah
you're around so many like Sheridan is like a really tough place to go because like you're a big fish in a very small pond. I think it was Heather that said that actually.
what
Um,
do you mean a big fish in a small pond?
like people hype up the Sheridan animation program so much as like, oh,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
so hard to get into, like you're
I mean it
taking away,
is.
yeah, you're taking away like the opportunity from nine other people, and it's like, oh shit, okay, damn, sorry. And then so now like you're like, okay, I'm surrounded by all of these really,
Yeah.
really amazing artists. How do I stand out? But it's like I think that's also like a mentality that comes from like the old industry. And I feel like the industry has changed so much at this point that like I was chatting with an old instructor of mine, Jason Lin, and he mentioned that like there's more jobs out there in animation than there are people to do them, you know?
Yeah.
And I think people, especially people that are just stepping into school or just stepping into the industry, I say we because I was also guilty of this, we underestimate how important networking is and connection and connecting with your peers and your fellow classmates over making sure that you're better than them, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can even think of a couple people that come to mind where like the pressure really got to them and they left the program because
Yeah. Yeah. That's always
it's
sad.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
super sad. And like looking back, it's so funny how hindsight kind of tells you like, why were you stressing? Like grades literally didn't matter. It's just like do your best and like learn how to rig a character in the storyboarding basics and like who cares if you came up with the because I even like character design class, which is like the most chill class ever.
Hmm.
Everybody's like, I'm gonna have this super back, myself included, I'm gonna put a super backstory into my characters. They're gonna be like totally OCs on their own. They're gonna be amazing. And it's like I remember somebody drew, I don't know who it was, but like after like slaving away on like doing so many different character drafts, and then I got on the board in the hallway, which was like the highlight for like me
The
personally, and then
board.
somebody else just
Yeah.
drew like a round ball cat with a face.
I
I
will
don't
never forget that.
I was
That
like,
was the
I
most
could have done
incredible
this
thing.
and got perfect marks.
That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen because that was poetic justice, Terry. You understand that? It's like it was almost a metaphor for me when I saw that on the wall in first year, where I was like, this represents like the silliness of wanting to just like go 200% and burn yourself out right off the bat rather than just like go with the simpler option that works,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's not to say like you shouldn't push yourself to like improve, absolutely do that, but like it doesn't always have to be complicated, you
No,
know?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you're going to Sheridan right now and you're listening to this, please don't put 110% of yourself into
don't do it.
every single assignment. Choose
Don't
your
do it.
assignments you want to do that with
Yeah.
and line that up with what you want to do. So, okay, on that note, you were interested in storyboarding. Does that mean you went really hard in storyboarding classes and like with storyboarding assignments, or did you kind of, do the degree to, you know, evenly for all fields, and then you ended up in storyboarding type of thing?
Um, I didn't do evenly throughout, I don't think. I don't think that's like I don't think most people did that, to be honest, unless you wanted to be like a jack of all trades kind of thing. But I did kind of like try to hone my skills more in areas that I wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
Um, like and there's bits and pieces to take away from every part of the pipeline when it comes to storyboarding is the thing, because and I've learned that more like starting to work in the industry too, because with animation class, you're able to learn how things move, and that's significant for storyboarding. And layout is so important for storyboarding because you understand staging and composition and perspective, or even character design. There's this thing called post-board designs now in storyboarding, where kind of like if there's like a thing in the script where it doesn't have like a concrete design yet, the board artist is meant to kind of like rough out an approximation of what that design would be in the boards, and then the designers would then take that board and actually make a design out of it. So yeah, it's like with storyboarding, it's like you kind of have to like have absorbed a little bit from each facet, aside
Yeah.
from painting, I guess, which is hilarious because I have a lot of painting
Because
experience.
yeah.
But that is like the interesting thing about boarding, which kind of like drew me into it as well, because it was the visualization process of what everything is going to be in the end. But then it's also really fun to kind of like see the end results of like what you had worked on at the very beginning of the pipeline process, and then like what it went through and like what people made at the end. And it's so cool. It's just so
Yeah.
cool.
Do you watch all the episodes that you've storyboarded in full and be like how it changed and like what they took and what they did with your stuff?
The animatics that have been completed, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Amazing.
so much fun.
So,
It's
okay, tell me how, you know, I mentioned you were in school for 8 years, which is a long time.
Yeah, it is.
How does it feel now that you're working? You've ended up somewhere.
It's so weird. It's
Yeah.
because like
How long have you been working for now?
it's been almost a month now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, next week will be a month. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, it's a really weird feeling, just because like I've technically been in school since I started school. I never took like a year off or anything. Like I've just
Yeah.
been like
Wow.
kindergarten, like just zooming
Okay,
through.
so
And
20 years in school. How does it feel to
literally 20, yeah, it's crazy. It feels really weird. I sometimes have to catch myself, because like I'd be making plans with friends, and then I'd be like, okay, so like maybe we could like do this like the week before September starts. And then I'm like, wait, why do I have to like be worried about when September starts? I don't have to do that anymore.
You're still gonna have, I after I finished my first degree at Laurier, I still had nightmares of exams and like waking up years later being like, I forgot my calculator for the calculus. It'll last. It'll
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
happening.
Yeah, I'm anticipating like once September rolls around, and like I'm kind of like, when does school start?
You
Did I
just you
pay my
just start
tuition?
feeling stress for no reason. You're shaking while
Yeah.
you're working.
Yeah. I was seeing like the 2023 grads kind of posting about like what mentors they have for their thesis films, and I was like, what mentor do I have? I'm like, wait, I'm done.
Wait a minute. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it feels weird.
Yeah.
Is this, now that you're working professionally, was it what you expected when you were learning about storyboarding and whatnot? Like,
Yeah, for sure. Because well, the revisionist position,
yeah, yeah,
I had an idea of what a board revisionist did, but I didn't have like the full scope of it until I kind of like stepped in. And if for the most part it's along the lines of what I assumed it would be.
so lay it out for
Um,
me.
yeah, for sure. So the way that they do it on my production, at least at Atomic, um, we have two board directors, wonderful people, by the way, and they basically separate each episode into sequences, and each sequence has like its own set of revisions, you could say, that is kind of discussed with each other and with the director and with the clients as well. And then based off of that, I would then receive any given sequence, and I would either have to fix the posing. Maybe they wanted like a little bit more oomph in a scene, or maybe there was like an expression change that they wanted where they're looking angry but they prefer them to look a little bit more morose, we'll say.
Oh.
Yeah, or there's like a design change that had happened that has to be adjusted. I would go in and fix up those designs, and that's kind of like more of like the more chill things that I have to do. Sometimes there's bits where there's like a crowd of people, for example, and the board artist didn't have enough time to kind of like go in and like draw every single background character and like have them do actions. So I would then go in and they'd give me a note of like have like, I don't know, two people making out in the back with another guy like crying or something, or have this person like dancing really, really stupidly, like a really bad dance, but like she thinks that she's good at it. So that's when I can get really creative, and like that's when like the fun comes in for me,
Yeah.
where I'm kind of able to like go in and like put in my own little like storytelling in the background of like what's going on with like the main characters in the foreground. Yeah, it's like my own little like tidbit into
I
each
love that
episode.
though, and it probably makes the episodes like much more interesting to watch, even like a second time when there's like more heart in everything of it. So I love that you like
Yeah.
are putting that excitement that you have into your revisions. So okay, so it sounds like the process is the script is turned into boards by the board artists. Then the boards go through this review with the director and the client, whatever, and then they're passed on to the revisionist with those notes. So
Mhm.
you have to are like you in the meetings with these like the director and the clients, or you're just given like notes written down.
No,
You
I'm
have
just
to
given
interpret.
notes. Yeah,
Isn't
there's like a
that
whole
like
spreadsheet.
oh gosh, isn't that
Yeah.
like super like are you constantly going back to the director and being like, what did you mean by this? Or is it like
Um, not too frequently, just because like I'm very lucky that I have great board directors and they're very thorough with their notes. There are
yeah.
some times when maybe like I misinterpret a note that they put down and then they just like clarify it when I send them like the progress MOV. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what you meant. Or sometimes if I don't fully understand something, or like for example, today there was a note for me to kind of like add in a few panels of acting for a character, and I wasn't the kind of like time frame I didn't feel like was enough. So then I went to my board director and I was like, is it okay if I adjust the timing on this sequence?
Hmm,
And then she gave me like the okay for that. So yeah, there is a
nice.
little bit of back and forth, but like, it's all a part of like working as a team and communicating, which is very, very important.
Totally, totally. Do you
Yeah.
have, like just I know you're super fresh into this.
Mhm.
Do you have an overall like goal that you want to achieve in boarding? Do you want to become a board artist eventually? I mean, like I feel
Yeah.
like in boarding there's a very specific path. Like, you're revisionist, then board supervisor, then like getting into almost like show running and stuff. Is that kind of like
Yeah.
the is that the path you're going
Yeah,
for?
that's so like it's funny because I call myself a little bit of a control freak just because I like running things. I just like being in charge. I
Okay,
like
so we're skipping the
controlling everything.
showrunner.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean there that is a part of it, but another part of it is that like I do kind of like want to put some of my own stories out there too.
Yeah, yeah.
I do want to eventually become either a director or a showrunner. Either or would be amazing. That's kind of like my career bucket list, like number one career bucket list item, to become like a director or showrunner one day. Um, yeah, yeah.
Cool. I'm wondering, now that you're actually working as a revisionist, what are some of the expectations? Well, I guess you kind of shared, but like, I'm just wondering, how did you get them to hire you essentially? What did you show them for them to be like, we feel super confident that Dorsa can take on this job, no problem. Like
So
what are
it's
the things that they were looking for? And if you could go back and like tweak your portfolio or refine your path a little bit more, what would you do?
yeah, so I would actually still want to go in and tweak my portfolio a little bit right now because it's still not like it's good, but I'm not fully satisfied with it yet.
Yeah.
Um, but one thing that I did that I included in my portfolio was process work for boards,
Oh,
which I actually haven't seen a lot. And I actually give that credit to my fourth year thesis mentor, Jim Caswell, because he was the one who suggested I do that. So I put in my thesis boards, and obviously I had like my final animatica plus like all of the boards. And then beneath that, I also put down the initial boards that I had done, because my thesis had changed a lot as I was working on it. And I really wanted to like hunker down and focus on the boarding process for obvious reasons. But by putting that down, and then like I added like a little blurb at the top kind of explaining why I had made the changes that I had made. And I explained that the reason why was because I wanted to streamline my thesis film to make it doable in the time frame that I had, and to kind of have the story be a lot more like, the word is, I'm lost on the word, comprehensive, I guess. And by doing that, when I would show my boards at Taffy, and I would kind of like talk to them about like my process, that kind of gave the recruiters a bit of like an insight into the fact that I understand how the pipeline works. I understand that certain shortcuts have to be made for production budgets,
Yeah.
and certain shortcuts have to be made for animation as well as like backgrounds. For example, like I would reuse a lot of backgrounds in my boards, and I explained to them like this is why. And mind you, that's very useful if you're trying to get into like TV animation, because budgets are tight with TV. So if they see that like not only are you a good board artist and good at like gesture drawing, but you actually understand the pipeline, that I think that's something that kind of like,
What was
did you
that?
hear that?
No. What was that? A big flash?
I think that was lightning.
Oh, what?
Yeah, that was lightning.
Like, we're in the same city. It's not even raining.
I mean, I'm in North York, to be
Okay,
fair.
where
I'm at like Downsview.
all right, so I can expect a lightning storm my way. No, I didn't hear anything. I saw a big flash,
It was
but
really loud. I'm surprised that you didn't hear it. Sorry, that
random.
just totally threw me off. Yeah, if they see that you understand both like the drawing aspect and like the pipeline process, I
Yeah.
think that helped my chances. However, one very interesting thing that happened with Atomic that I'm working with right now, um, and it's kind of like it was a learning thing for me too, that I would want to pass on to other people, is that I actually interviewed with them back in June. It was like
Yeah.
early June when I interviewed with them. And it was a great interview. It went really well, but they ended up going with someone with more experience than I did, which understandable.
You're like,
And then
understandable. I'm still
understandable.
amazing.
Oh, come on. And then 2 months later, I got a message from the line producer, and she was like, "Hey, are you still available for work? Because we actually have a new position opened up, and the directors really loved your attitude during the interview. So, like, we'd love to have you on." And that's actually why I started working with them. And I also ended up connecting with them on LinkedIn after my initial interview.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the industry works in weird ways, and that's why I say that like networking is way more important than any kind of like, well, not your skill, but like, being the best at
Totally,
what
totally.
you're doing. Yeah, like making sure that you have a good attitude when you go into an interview, that you're not like, you're not putting yourself down too much, but you're also not like being a little bit too stuck up, I
Yeah, I
guess.
wanted to ask you about that. Like, like I consider you a friendly, great person, but like, what
Oh,
was
you're
your
kind.
specific? So I'm sure that came across in your interview, but like, what was your specific attitude in the interview that they found great? Were you like super excited, humble? Like, I don't know, like, like that you
Well,
stood out a bit more.
yeah, I guess from what I remember about the interview, it was obviously you want to show like excitement for working with these people. You want to show enthusiasm for the production itself. With my interview, they kind of like broke down what the show was going to be about. They said that it was like an adult comedy, which like it's so rare to be able to work on adult comedy in Canada,
Yeah,
so I was like, oh my God, yes, please, I want in. So I was very enthusiastic, but I think the main thing that we talked about that I feel made me stand out a little bit was they actually asked me about my time as a production manager for my third year group film.
Hmm.
And yeah, because I had put that down on my resume that I was the PM for my third year group film. And I think they've already dealt with a lot of like Sheridan grads, so they kind of know everything about like the third year group film process. And they were asking me like, what was that like? And I was honestly just very real with them about like the struggles that like myself and my group faced, and the fact that there was a lot of like conflict management, but that it taught me that communication is key,
Yeah.
and asking questions when there are questions is key, and understanding that like it's not only the part of like the leaders to be open to understanding and accepting that people might ask questions that are very that whose answers are very obvious to the leaders themselves but not obvious to other people. So you have to kind of like be able to foster that kind of like open environment where people feel safe coming to you and asking you these questions. um, and I think like as directors, obviously they're leaders of their own, so they really connected with that as well. And yeah, it was I just kept it real with them, as that's like the easiest way that I can explain it. And I think that's what made me stand out a little bit in
That
that
makes a lot of
interview.
sense. I'm like, do you want to project manage my next thing? That sounds great. Honestly, I think that's great. From my past career, I've done a lot of interviews, and it's almost too easy to tell when somebody is like overexcited and giving flowers and rainbows for every answer,
Mhm.
because that's kind of the go-to is like, I'm perfect. Everything's like, it's unintentional to come across that way, but you don't want to say any conflict in an interview. But if you're just genuine and real and be like, hey, some shit happened and wait to conflict management, I think
Yeah.
that's great. And obviously you made an impression that 2 months later you stuck out to the director and they emailed you. I think that's great, because you're at Taffy where they're just constantly interviewing people the entire day, and they're
Yeah.
going to the schools, etc. I'm also curious, how um in demand are storyboard people in Toronto, because as far as I understand, it's like one of the harder to get jobs because there's not as many of them, versus like if you want to get into like 2D rigging, every TV show needs that. Is it super competitive and not that many positions, or is that just a falsity that I've created in my mind?
It's definitely competitive.
Yeah.
There are a ton of positions out there.
Mm.
Obviously not as much as 2D riggers, because like just animation jobs in general are just like there's so much of them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it is very competitive to get into boards. I applied to heaven knows how many jobs,
Yeah, I was
and
going to ask, how
I
many jobs and interviews did you end up having?
so many.
Like
I
a
can't like
hundred?
I've lost count at this point. It's that is something that you also have to like keep in mind, like for the industry in general, when you're like first stepping into it, because people don't yet know who you are. You literally just have to send as many resumes as you can, as
Yeah.
many like job apps, even if it's not like your most ideal job. Just send your resume in anyway. Even if you don't think that your portfolio is like up to par, send it in anyway. What's the worst that can happen? They say no.
But like, also, isn't that kind of like clouding the, I don't know the right metaphor, clouding the pool. I'm gonna make that one up. If you're just putting your resume in for something you don't really want, and you like, say you've created a storyboarding resume, but
Mhm.
it's like a 2D rigger position, you're just throwing it in. Doesn't couldn't you also perceive it as like, they see this person's applying for everything? Like,
Well, it's funny because I actually talked to some recruiters about it during Taffy, and they gave me that same advice where they were like, just send your resume in at
really?
all points. Yeah, and I think the main reason why is because you want them to know your name. You want them
Yeah.
to know your name,
They're not
and
like, oh, this Dorsa person again. Like,
exactly, and
they're like,
like
oh, this
they'll even
Dorsa person again.
oh, it's Dorsa, yeah. They'll even go to your website and they'll
Oh, for
see your
sure.
work,
Yeah.
and maybe if they see your name pop up again on like another application, and they go back to your website and they see your work, they're like, oh yeah, I remember this person. Wait, yeah, this style actually does suit the show that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Maybe I can work with this. So i- like it's I would say leave that for the recruiters to worry about.
That's fair. That's fair. You
Yeah,
know what? I've never had a recruiter on this podcast, and I probably should, just to
you
get their
should do
perspective.
that. Yeah,
Because
you should totally do
I'm
that.
thinking like, are you tailoring your resume and cover letter or whatever for every company? Like they're offering like a storyboard revisionist position or a 2D rigger, just because we view these. Are you saying like, I'd love to become a 2D rigger. Here's my 2D rigging work from Sheridan, and then the storyboard, you're like, here's my storyboard work. Are you just, you have your storyboard portfolio set up to be a storyboard portfolio, and then just applying for both?
Well, the way that I have my site set up is kind of like there's like tabs for each bit. When I send in my resume for story positions, it is a little bit different than the resumes that I send in for other positions, just
Yeah.
because I also add a passcode to my boarding portfolio at the very top, which people are kind of like having like this discussion that like passcodes and password protected boarding portfolios aren't great because like it's just an added layer of something that the recruiter has to do, which, you know, maybe I'll go in and change that soon. But uh it's the cover letter
Yeah.
that is mainly the one that kind of differs from position to position.
I love storyboarding. It's great. I mean,
Yeah.
so how long, you graduated in May? Is
Mhm.
that right? May.
April,
So it's
technically, I guess.
it's
Yeah.
now August. So, and you've been working since July.
Mhm.
So 2 months of applying everywhere. That's not bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was applying before that too.
How
Like,
did it?
but
So like Sheridan has their big industry day, which is like where you're supposed to get,
yeah.
where they tell you you're supposed to get hired or whatever. Did it? And I'm assuming you didn't get hired during industry day. How did that feel? Did it feel like, a missed opportunity, or like you just got to keep grinding? Because I'm sure you saw classmates getting picked up from that.
It's funny because the industry day that we had, it wasn't what I thought it would be. And I feel like a lot of people felt that way too, where it
Yeah.
was kind of like it was another networking opportunity. However, a lot of studios didn't actually put in the time to have one-on-ones with people, which
Yeah.
like it's understandable. There's like a billion of us. But yeah, I think just like with the schools need to be a little bit more like transparent about that because I think a lot of people had kind of like held off on sending out applications because they were like hoping to get something out of industry day
Yeah.
and then they were like very much disappointed afterwards.
Right.
I
Like
would
if
say
Atomic
just
is coming to industry day, why would you apply beforehand? And then,
exactly, yeah, because you're like, oh, I'm gonna have like all the time in the world to like show them my film and talk about myself.
yeah,
But yeah, that's not what happened,
interesting.
unfortunately. There were some studios that did do like one-on-ones, but there were a lot that didn't. And
So
so
during, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say like I would just start sending applications as soon as possible.
So you're
Like
just looking up every industry. You're just going like Animation Studio Toronto and just going to their website and looking for open positions and sending them, or you just like, is that how it worked? I mean, you also went to Taffy, which if you're listening to this and don't know what it is, it's Toronto Arts and Animation Festival International. It's a conference
yes.
here.
Yes, yeah. It's very important, especially the job fair. If you're looking to break into the industry, Taffy is a great place to go to, and it's free,
Yeah.
from what I remember. Yeah. Um, but sorry, remind me of your question.
Well, how were you just going to every website and applying, like type of thing?
I mainly use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really
Ah,
good with that. Yeah, because most studios kind of like keep their posts up to date. With the animation industry especially, they have a very big LinkedIn presence.
yeah.
And connecting with recruiters is a very important thing
So like just hit
because
connect with XYZ recruiter and then do you shoot them a message or anything? Just be
I
like, hey,
do. Yeah. So especially if you meet them at Taffy and like maybe you guys like discuss something in particular, when you're kind of connecting with them on LinkedIn, you can kind of add in that message. Oh, hey, so and so, we talked about this and that.
yeah.
Remember me? Like we connected at Taffy and like I talked about this. I'd love to like keep in touch. And then that can then kind of like open the door for like further communication.
Sounds pretty standard, like the whole process. You get the skills, you know what you want, you apply to
Mhm.
everything, you get your first job. Thankfully, it's in something that you are particularly interested in and
Yeah, I'm
love.
very grateful for that.
And then, this is the start of a beautiful blossoming career in drawing every day, which I think is fantastic. You also mentioned, that there were stories that you wanted to tell specifically. Do you want to give some insight into that?
Uh, yeah, I mean, like there's like 1,001 kinds of stories that I want to tell.
Yeah.
I'm a DM for D&D, by the way, in case it wasn't obvious. And so yeah, just storytelling has just been like what I've wanted to do forever. Like
Yeah.
and that's something that stayed consistent throughout my life, regardless of like me going from viz dev to boarding or whatever.
Is there a specific story that you want to tell, or are you just you're just excited to be part of the process of telling a story? Like if I were to be like, Doris, I love your work. Here's $200 million to make a feature Doesn't even have to be a feature film to tell the story that you want to tell. Like, is there a specific thing that you want to tell, or is it just like, I'm happy to, script for this book came out, I'm super happy to tell that story?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely yes to $200 million, or
of course, yeah. At that point,
you're like, sure, I'll take 200
I just
million. Why
retired to
not?
Fiji at that point, like no, there is a story that I do want to tell. Obviously there's
You
a
don't have
lot
to.
that
You don't have to
Oh yeah,
share
yeah,
it
yeah.
on
No,
this
no,
podcast.
no. There's a lot to like finesse about it.
Yeah.
And obviously like over the past few years I've also learned a lot more about storytelling. That I didn't know when I was first kind of like coining what I was thinking about. But I think I've also been like exposed to a lot of like different kinds of stories lately that maybe I kind of want to like explore a little bit more before I settle on one that I would want to like eventually pursue as kind of like a big thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds cool. I'm just wondering because, like, you mentioned that storytelling was something you really connected with as a kid, and it like helped you, socialize and deal with anxiety and things. So I was just wondering if there was a specific type of story that you wanted to tell. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I think it's great that you have something in mind, but you want to get more life experiences first. Because I've talked with a lot of writers and storyboard people on this podcast, and that's a big thing that comes up, is just like live life, go travel, talk to people, because you end up
Yeah.
hearing stories, refining stories, and creating new stories just from being a human on this earth, which I think is super
Yeah,
fantastic and
yeah,
fun.
absolutely. And I think like again, I mentioned earlier that like the industry has like evolved so much over the past few years that like I would also want to kind of introduce stories like from my own culture as well. Like I come from Iran and I don't really see a lot of like Persian media like in the West at all.
Right.
And like, yeah, I would have loved to like maybe grow up with like seeing like a Persian girl in like one of my favorite shows or movies or something. Um, but yeah, I would love to kind of like diversify the industry a little bit more in that regard as well.
Yeah.
Kind of like bring a little bit of myself in as well as my people in as well.
When you were growing up and watching TV, were there a lot of Persian things to watch growing up, or was it all
No,
just American
no.
animation?
Yeah, like I'm very lucky that like my parents were like those immigrant parents that were like, you will know your culture. And as a kid, you're kind of like, leave me alone. But like as an adult now, I can fully appreciate that like they really drilled that stuff in. And any of the Persian stuff that I would see, it would just be like old DVDs that my parents had
Yeah.
that they would bring from Iran over here and like burn on like a VCR tape or yeah, and it was just yeah, it wasn't very accessible for me. And
Yeah.
so I think I'd want to change that a little bit.
I love that. And I mean, like, now's the perfect time when, I think that studios are specifically looking for new and more international stories to tell.
Yeah.
I think it's a great time. I'm thinking about like, like, I'm still thinking about how you spent 8 years in school, in art school and animation school, to end up here, which I think is incredible. Were there any big misconceptions you had now that you're finally working, even though it's only been a month?
Big misconceptions. I think I had more misconceptions going into Sheridan than
Hmm.
I did graduating and coming into the industry. Um, just because like obviously I had a great time at Sheridan. I met so many wonderful people, including you.
Oh, hi.
Um, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Sheridan was a great environment for me to kind of grow not only as an artist but as a person as well. Um, but I think you kind of come into Sheridan with like these like bright eyes and like, oh, everything is going to be great from here on out. But it's still work. You're still working hard. You're still again competing to a certain extent against people that you really like, in all honesty. um and I think it was like the imposter syndrome stuff and like the self-doubt moments that was a misconception for me because I came into Sheridan as like a more mature student.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't like fresh out of high school. I was like an adult. I was 22. And I guess like coming into Sheridan, I was like, yeah, no, that like this is it. This is done. I'm done struggling. Like I'm good now forever. Which is a very early 20s thing to think. And when I was kind of like hit with those moments of like difficulty and self-doubt and imposter syndrome, I think those were like really difficult moments for me to deal with that I luckily eventually learned how to cope with a lot better.
Yeah. I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you, how do you cope with that? Because, I had the opposite. I went to Sheridan when I was 30 and felt like, why am I here? I'm not good enough. And then slowly over time, just being around and doing and
Yeah.
getting positive feedback for me just helped me be like, you know what, I'm choosing this path because this is what I want. And things are going okay. So let's just ignore the self-doubt for now.
Yeah. I think one thing to keep in mind, and this goes back to like the whole interview process as well, is that when you're kind of like honing your skills in school, people want you to succeed. Like you're going into an interview, the people interviewing you want you to succeed. They want you to kind of like be the person that they're looking for. So I think getting out of that like victim mindset really helped me out, where I wasn't like everyone's out to get me all the time. It's like, no, like people are here to make sure that you succeed. They want you to succeed. It's going to make their lives easier. It's going to make your life easier, and it's going to make the industry better as well. And I know that I actually talked about that with one of our profs at Sheridan, DQ, where he mentioned how different the industry was back when he was in it, where like the competition was really toxic. But nowadays it's like the more you help the people around you grow and flourish, the more you yourself will succeed as an artist and as an individual in the industry as well. So I think that that's something that really helped me kind of like relax on the imposter syndrome, relax on like the self-doubt, is that A, people want you to succeed, and B, people want you to help them succeed as well.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I've never really thought of it like that, but you're totally right. You know, even the recruiter, they want you to be the person that they hire. They're not out to get you. And like, going into an interview for the first time is super intimidating. You're sweating, like you're confused on if what you're wearing is even okay and acceptable for these people to look at. Like, I feel like in business, it was a little bit easier. You have to wear a suit every time. So it's like, you don't have to
There's
worry
a
about what you're
uniform.
wearing. Cause like in animation, you're like, do I wear something nicer? And then you end up overdressed versus your interviewers. But yeah, if you just like, I really like that. Consider that these people are looking to help you out and to succeed for both parties. I think that's great. And it has been like that. Like the reason this podcast is successful is because, so like yourself, so many people say yes to sharing their experiences because they want to help out others and they want others to succeed. I think that's really good. I'm going to think about that next time when I'm feeling intimidated, like, cause like I do my show pitches and I'm talking to like studio executives and it's like super intimidating. And you're like, they don't want this pitch and blah, blah, blah. But really they like, I should change my thinking to be like, they're looking for this pitch. And if it's not right for them, they're still going to be super helpful, I guess.
Yeah, it's like they're sitting there listening to you for a reason, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm wasting their 15 minutes that we've booked for this out of their day. Interesting. No, it's really good. And I think that's a really positive mentality to have, especially because like, I feel like this industry is very easy to burn out in. And so if it's just another strategy to keep being amazing.
Yeah. People really need to take care of themselves when they first come in here, especially like new students. Oh my God. There were a few first years that were helping me on my thesis film, and I was talking to them and they were like, yeah, I think I'm going to restart this like layout project that I've been working on because I just think it could be better. And I was like, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, just
so
don't.
Stop helping me out. You have enough stuff to do already.
Yeah, I was like, you don't need to like restart an assignment. If it's working, it's working.
And
just
hand it in and move on. Like if you already think it's going to be better, then save that for the next assignment. Like don't restart it.
Yeah, take it as a learning opportunity. Like it's fresh coming from me because I'm also a very terrible perfectionist, but perfectionism it's going to be your downfall.
Says the person who works on the same oil painting for like how many years?
All right, that's like a process. It's like
It's a
therapeutic for
process.
me.
Yeah. I'm just teasing you. Amazing. Yeah, well, we've talked about, kind of where you started and where you got the inspiration to choose an art career, and then going to OCAD and Sheridan and ending up in storyboarding, which I think is amazing. It's kind of it's like, how does it feel to sum up your whole life in, what has it been, like half an hour or whatever?
Well, it's been ad-libbed, obviously, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's humbling, I guess. It's like, wow, I did a lot, even though like just regularly I'm like, I've just started, but it's like, oh, I've done a lot. I've gone through a lot.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you certainly have, and I mean, like, getting your first job in the industry, I think is a big achievement, because think about all the effort and time and money and people and resources that you put into just getting this. You've been doing this for 1 month. I think it's amazing, and it's like, you know, I don't know. There's something special about this industry, and that I can't really describe. And just hearing you talk about your experience just makes me feel, I don't know, just really happy for you
Oh,
and
thank you so
myself.
much. Oh, that's
Somehow.
so kind. Yeah, no, again, I mentioned at the very beginning, but it's been so fun and lovely and exciting to see everything that you've been working on. And
Oh my
like,
goodness, don't talk about
I
me, but
am,
thank
I'm
you.
so proud of you, Terry, like genuinely.
Oh,
Like
thanks.
I see you thriving and I'm like,
Yeah.
there he goes.
Well, super thank you. I think the main difference with my path is the importance of networking. I just started as soon as I went to Sheridan. Like, I started this podcast the same month that I went to Sheridan, and
Yeah.
it's like paid off for me
Yeah, I
multiple
would
times
assume so.
over.
It's such a fun and like creative way to like network, right? You've connected
Yeah.
with so many amazing industry professionals
Yeah,
this
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah. Plus, it's just, I'm trying to actually bring on more people internationally. Like I mentioned, I chatted with somebody from just off the before we started this. I chatted with somebody from Morocco. I'm publishing. I actually, maybe my most interesting one yet. I had a chat with a stop motion animator in Turkey last week,
Oh,
and he doesn't even speak English, so we had to have a translator on the call as well to translate
oh
from English to Turkey. It
wow.
was super interesting. So I'm trying to like span more outside of just the Canadian and North American and UK as well industry, which I think are super important. But it's there's so many budding, animation industries around the world, and I think it's a really interesting time where technology and the pandemic, even though it was absolutely horrible, opened up people's minds to working with more people internationally, which I think is really
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. That is like if we're trying to look for a silver lining, just like remote work opening up more
Yeah.
in the industry and just like having more opportunities to work
Well,
with.
you're working remotely,
I am, yes, yeah,
even though
yeah.
you could go into the office, I guess.
Well, it's in Ottawa.
But like, you're
It'd be a
still in the
long
same,
commute.
but I mean, like, traditionally, well, yeah, not going, I guess what I was meaning was,
Yeah,
like, traditionally you just move to Ottawa, which isn't, it's what, 5 hours away or something from here.
yeah, yeah.
But you haven't done that, and there's no expectation to do that either,
Nope,
even though just
none.
like 2 years ago this was never an option, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And like it's good because I could stay close to my parents,
Yeah.
like and I could kind of like be around family, be around friends. Um but I guess like I've worked for two studios now and I still haven't had like the studio experience, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's the
Yeah.
one thing. Like, I miss that. I'm working remotely as well, and I miss going in and seeing people in real life, because
Yeah.
you just like, I have coworkers that are in the States and other countries that we see each other for like a Zoom chat, and that's
Mhm.
it. But like, when you're working with people in real life, it's just a totally different connection, and yeah, I kind of miss
Yeah,
that.
I think it's important to attend like virtual work events then that way because I actually this was something that I talked to my two board directors about 2 days ago actually, where they were kind of like doing one-on-ones with all of us just to like check in, and they were asking for any suggestions or something that they wanted or that we wanted to kind of like see, and they had mentioned at one point that the reason why they were doing the check-ins was because there was like a little bit of a disconnect. And I was like, why don't we just have like, either like a little draw together once a
Yeah,
month, like a little lunch, virtual lunch thing where we all just kind of like sit in a call and just have
yeah.
lunch or talk
Like a
or
no
discuss
pressure
things.
chill
Yeah,
time.
just like a
Yeah.
very casual thing. And it's tough with like certain work schedules, obviously, but you know, they were really into the idea. So I'm hoping that that happens with us soon.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, it's important to try and attend virtual work events and talk to your colleagues as much as you can, because as many benefits as remote work has, there are also the cons that come with it as well.
Totally, totally. I
Yeah.
mean, the Ottawa International Animation Festival is coming up, so you could
Hmm.
go to that and then check out your new
I
company as
could.
well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Random other question that I thought of,
Yeah.
because everything's remote work, like, freelance has opened up a lot. Is that something you've considered as well? Because working for a
Yeah.
studio full time is like one thing, and then working like as a freelance hop around person is another thing. It's my
Yeah,
last question.
absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I've wanted to kind of like um start doing freelancing jobs too. Maybe in like a month or two, I'll start looking around for that. Um I'm not really sure how freelancing works for board revisions. I'm
Hmm.
not really sure if like that's like a thing. I'll have
It
to
might
look
be
more
for
into
like
it.
smaller, like a commercial project needs like a 30-second spot, somebody to like animate
Yeah,
like or
yeah.
storyboard or something like that.
I feel like for myself, for like freelancing right now, I would maybe want to do more illustration stuff and design stuff.
Cool.
Just because like, I'm doing boarding for my job like 9 to 5. And then I
Yeah.
think I want to like keep my general drawing skills and painting skills up to par. And I think like, making a few bucks on the side wouldn't hurt.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Well, Dorsa, we've chatted all about your life. I'm wondering, is there anything else that you wanted to share that you think would be interesting for those listening to hear, or something we didn't hit on specifically? Or I guess we didn't really talk about your transition from biz dev to storyboarding in depth. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to share in that.
Yeah, I think more than anything else, if there's something else that I would want to share, is just like for the people who are looking to break into the industry first, and emphasizing how important it is to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's like both physically and mentally, especially if you're looking to go to an art school or an animation school, it can get really, really, really grueling
Oh
in
yeah,
both
and you immediately just
aspects.
sacrifice your physical and mental health.
Don't do
Just
that.
like
Do not do that. I actually had during school, this kind of like burned away during the pandemic for various reasons, but for the first 2 years of Sheridan, I had this policy for myself where once 10 p.m. at night hit, I would stop working on everything.
oh
Like
wow.
stop working, stop doing anything. And the moment I felt strain in my arm, that's when work would take a
Yeah,
back seat.
yeah, for
And
sure.
again, I cannot emphasize how important that is, because again, we mentioned that some people kind of like fell out of the industry, dropped out. There were a lot of people who dropped out because of physical injuries and because of mental injuries as well. And it, it really sucks to have to do that when the passion is there,
Yeah.
because it's just really sad. And I would say, like, again, standing out is one thing, but if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be around to stand out. So you really want to make sure that you're taking care of
Yeah,
yourself.
and it's not like it just happens overnight. It really creeps up on you because like you
Yeah.
said, I think it's great that you cut off 10 p.m. every day.
Yeah.
I think that's super important because one bad night leads to a whole week of bad nights, leads to a whole month of bad nights, and before you know it, like it hurts to move your hand,
Yeah.
but you still have to do the assignments and you don't want to stop because like due dates are coming up and all that stuff, and it's really tough. I
Yeah.
know exactly what you're talking about. There are people that had to take breaks because your physical
Yeah.
health and mental health really takes a toll. So
Exactly. Yeah. So like in times like that, it's okay to not go 150% with that assignment. It's okay to go 60% with an assignment even,
yeah,
you
and
know?
I feel like even when you're working, if you say to your supervisor or your prof or whatever, like, "Hey, listen, like I need a break." Or like my hand, I'm going to the doctor. Like, what are they going to say if they pressure you to do more? I'd be like, well, you suck.
Yeah, and
I think everybody in this industry understands those like the
yeah.
happenings.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, luckily, it seems like both of us have had really good experiences so far. I'm sure that there's some unfortunate
Yeah,
places
yeah,
that don't understand that fully, but again, I think like people kind of get lost in like the whole like, oh, if I don't push myself 150%, then I'm going to lose out on this, this, and this. And it's like, sure, you might lose out on it like for now, but if you keep pushing yourself and you keep burning out and injuring yourself, then it's going to be like an end. And then when there's an end, there's nowhere to go after that.
Right. It's like, what's the goal? It's like, if you're hating the process never changes. Like for your whole life, you could, then maybe it's not for you, or you're pushing yourself too far and you have to find a space where you can do this and be happy and healthy at the same time, which, I think is totally possible. And it's okay to take a break as well if you need it. I think that's totally, totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to draw boundaries.
Yeah. Boundaries. Well, Dorsa, is there anything else you wanted to share as we're kind of wrapping up? I think this has been a fantastic chat so far.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's everything about me. I don't know. Have I missed anything?
Did you miss anything about you?
Oh, I don't know.
No, but, I think it's great. I think I've loved watching your work over the years, and I think you're an amazing artist, and I'm super happy that you're doing something that you're passionate about, and also that you've found the thing that you like to do. I think that's great because, it's a journey for everybody, and everybody's journey is different. My journey, I'm, I don't know, what am I, 10 years older than you? And it took me that long to figure out this for myself. So that's great.
Yeah.
And, I hope that one day you can really tell that story that, is on your heart. And I think that would be amazing. I'll be your biggest fan when that happens.
That's a lovely thought. Thank you so much, Terry. And it's been great chatting with you as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on the chat. And if you're listening and you want to reach out to Dorsa or follow her work, you can do so by checking out her Instagram or her website. And I'll include both those links in the description of this chat. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.